Welcome back to another episode of Lost Codex Legends. My name is Jesse, and today we're talking about yet another rogue character, this time on the Horde side. Today we're talking about the one and only Lilian Voss. And without further ado, without delay, without chit-chat, let's talk Voss. Although we know Lilian Voss is a devoted agent of the Forsaken, she certainly didn't start that way. Lilian Voss was raised by her father, High Priest Benedictus Voss, who was a High Priest of the Scarlet Crusade, and likely the Church of the Holy Light before that. Lilian tells us that she pretty much gave up her childhood for her father, as she was trained into a stalwart soldier of the Scarlet Crusade and their radical teachings. As a child or young adult, Lilian learned a whole set of skills from magic and sorcery to stealth and martial arts, anything that would make her a better weapon, against the forces of undeath. Ultimately, this harsh, structured upbringing led to Lilian Voss pretty much giving up her childhood, and she would grow up into a young woman, a young, loyal soldier of the Scarlet Crusade. We do know at some point she was friends with Scarlet Lieutenant Gebler. At some point in time, Lilian Voss meets an untimely end, and we're not exactly sure how. Could have been against the undead, and could have contracted the plague. Could she have been murdered by other Scarlets? Gebler, her friend, once mentions that she was too dangerous in life, so maybe she got a little bit too radical. We have seen in certain cases, like Sir Thomas Thompson, that the Scarlet Crusade does kill their own when they become too radical, when they become too violent or aggressive, so maybe Lilian was put down by her own people. And it's possible she was killed by anti-Scarlets. Us, the players, murdered her for a quest at level 7. I don't know. We don't really know how she dies. Either way, she dies, and her corpse ends up in the death knell graves. It could have been on a meat wagon and just tossed in a pile. She could have actually been buried there at some point. We don't really know. But she, at this point, during the Cataclysm Forsaken storyline, she is raised into undeath by one of Sylvanas' loyal Valkyr. When she's raised, undeath is the worst possible fate for Lilian Voss. When Lilian awakes, she is terrified. This is the worst possible fate for someone like her. She grew up in recent years hating everything about the Scourge, everything about the Forsaken, everything about undeath. She was trained to hate it with every fiber of her being, and now she is one of those. Not to mention that when a Forsaken is newly awakened, there is a lot of emotions going on. There is fear, panic, hatred, anger, violence, all this stuff going on in your mind when you're newly awakened, especially if it's one of the last thoughts that you had in your mind. And while we don't know exactly what was going on with Lilian, what was going on in her mind when she awoke, we do know that she was so terrified that she utterly rejects what she is as a Forsaken and refuses to join the Forsaken. And off she runs into the Forest of Tearsfall Glades, and runs away from the player for the first little while. Later on, some of the Forsaken find her in Deathnell and employ adventurers, the player, to show Lilian what she looks like using a mirror. She is still terrified. She runs away, calling for her father and refusing to live her life as an undead. Again, in addition to all the nasty emotions going through her head right now as a newly resurrected Forsaken, everything that she is goes against everything that she hated in life. It's not just a matter of, she was a human being prejudiced against undead. No, she was part of the Scarlet Crusade, one of the most fanatical, insane groups out there, and they were harsh and brutal with their teachings, and everything that she hated about the Forsaken is now a part of her. Rather, she's a part of that, and she can't stand it, so she runs away from the mirror, calling for her dad. Later on, we find Lilian Voss captured by the Scarlet Crusade. Presumably, she ran into their camps and expected them to take her back, and she learns from her former friend, Gebler, that not only did her father disown her, but when he learned of what she had become, he ordered Gebler to carry out her immediate execution. Enraged and utterly consumed by hatred, Lilian Voss passes through the bars of her cage, and is surrounded by this strange purple fire that seems to be iconic to her aesthetic, and in that fit of anger and fit of rage, kills her former comrade Gebler. Sometime later, one of the high executors of the Forsaken is approached by Lilian, who swears animosity and hatred for the Crusade, and so he directs her north. Along the way, Lilian Voss is just going on an absolute slaughterfest, just flat out enraged. She gave up so much of her life, all of her childhood, for this order, and now she's completely abandoned it on death. And although she was once a part of that bigotry and hatred, now she's the one being targeted. Now she's the one being victimized here. And everything that she lived through, everything that she endured, has been for nothing. And she is taking out all of her emotions out on these Crusaders. And just murdering everyone in her path. At this point in time, the Horde player runs into her again, and she's probably run away a couple times at this point, but the Horde escort her to a small Scarlet outpost where her father is, and there's a really nice casual encounter between daughter and father, where she demonstrates her skills that he imposed upon her by killing his bodyguards. Then she grabs her father by the throat, scrambles up the wall of the tower, strangles him and kills him, and then completely vanishes again. We just let her do her thing, let her take out her anger, and there's just bodies of Scarlets everywhere, and off we go to continue our questing. Later on, the same High Executor that had been approached by Lilian earlier hears of a Scarlet camp near Fellstone Fields. When the Horde players reach the camp to investigate, they find everyone dead, and the entire camp and the bodies engulfed by this strange purple fire, implying that Lilian had murdered everyone and continued on her merry, happy way. Although Lilian Voss's story ends there for the Cataclysm, she does reappear rather quickly in Missa Pandaria for the Scarlet Crusade revamp. In these dungeons, she is disguised as a hooded crusader and asks both Horde and Alliance to go in and murder a whole bunch of Scarlets and prevent them from rebuilding. While we're there, she also asks us to retrieve the Blades of the Anointed, the only weapons capable of permanently killing High Inquisitor Sally Whitemane. She's very much not over that grudge yet, and seems to be quite annoyed that Whitemane keeps just coming back to life, as we've gone and killed her and taken her stupid hat several times. After the deed is done and we've plunged the blades into Whitemane's corpse, the hooded crusader reveals herself as Lilian Voss, and she takes up the blades for herself. After this, she leaves the Scarlet Monastery and plans to take out her anger and vengeance on the Scourge remnants in Scholomance. There, as she fights her way through the horrible haunted halls of Scholomance, she tracks down Dark Master Gandling, the instructor, the lead necromancer, with all the young little necromancers in Scholomance learning their first year of Hogwarts for necromancy, I guess. Lilian Voss despises everything about Dark Master Gandling, for he is creating more undead, more Scourge, for nefarious, evil purposes. She sees undeath as a curse, and she says to him, "I will not let you curse another soul with this nightmare." Unfortunately, Lilian Voss is no match for Dark Master Gandling, as his necromantic powers turn her against us. We're forced to not only fight her, but pretty much beat the necromantic possession out of her, forcing Gandling to flee, and she is very badly wounded, both from us and from Gandling's magic, and she tells us to let her die alone. Leave her there, let her die alone, and to go after Gandling. Fortunately, Lilian manages to escape Scholomance and ventures back off into the world, and is presumably active somewhere, but she's a rogue, so as long as we don't hear from her, we know she's doing a good job. So, good job, Lilian. I think. In Warlords of Draenor, she appears very briefly in both the Alliance and the Horde Tavern, enlisting adventurers to obtain a Soul Sever blade from the necromancers in Auchindoun to fight against the undead on Draenor. These were one of the random quests that appeared in your inn, if you had the inn in your garrison, and again, those quests are kind of difficult to not accept as canon, but there was a new traveler there every day. The way to Draenor was really not closed, but it was kind of closed, but not really. And yet Darian Mograine sometimes appears, and Lilian Voss, and then all these main characters. Cho shows up, like just people are just casually going to Draenor for vacation. It's really weird. We can't consider it not canon, but why would Lilian go to the Alliance? It just seems really bizarre. Either way, she wants us to go to Auchindoun and take one of their knives, I guess, to fight against the undead on Draenor. It's one of the little side quest lines. And so that's her involvement in Warlords, is very, very, very brief. Fortunately, in Legion, Lilian returns with a rather significant appearance in the Rogue class hall. In Legion, she could be found in the Halls of Shadow in Dalaran, the rogue class hall, sitting on some stairs, reading a book, and she's actually part of the uncrowned team that discovers a plot to attack the armies of Legionfall on the Broken Shore. With the help of Fleet Admiral Tethys and some fel-infused gunpowder, Lilian Voss helps stop the Legion ambush from happening in this cave and collapses the cave on top of them. During the Rogue Quest campaign, she also discovers the Legion's plot to use homunculi, an undead construct that is so lifelike and so well hidden that Lilian Voss actually has trouble discovering and detecting them. Because of their infiltration with Stormwind and Matthias Shaw, and the now very watchful demon hunters, the Legion couldn't risk sending more demons to do their bidding and take on the forms of other civilians and whatnot, and as such used these undead husks, these homunculi, as their servants to do their bidding and to spy and do whatever they wanted. Naturally, because they're undead, Lilian hates pretty much everything about them, and helps you take them out one by one to rid these capital cities of these spying Legion agents, while also stabbing undead, which she just loves to do, because that's what she hates most in this world. Now, Battle for Azeroth comes around, and Lilian is now part of the Horde. Lilian explains that her services were requested, not unlike Garona, but she seems to hold some true hatred for the Alliance. Lilian Voss notes that in life she was trained to hate and destroy the undead, and then when she became undead, she hated herself most of all. She notes that it's because of the Alliance who fosters this malice and hatred for her kind, this shunning of their former brothers and sisters because the Forsaken remind them of what lies beneath the facade of flesh. Lilian says that the cycle of hatred needs to end from the Alliance, and that they need to fall. She notes that the Scarlet Crusade's way of thinking is very human in thinking, and that it embraces that sort of paranoia and fear, which has left so many more Forsaken feeling that much more shunned, that much more hated, thus creating this endless cycle. And as I said, she wants the cycle to end and wants the Alliance to fall. I don't know if that's ending the cycle, Lilian, but you're angry. I get it. Her goals within the Horde are noble, though, because she is quite aware that Sylvanas wants to make many more Forsaken. This war is a massive war. It is being rumored to be called the Fourth War. This is a massive war, and Lilian says there's going to be a lot of bodies here, a lot of violence, and she actually wants to be there to support the new Forsaken. She wants to be there to comfort them and to help them. She's not there for the sole purpose of making new bodies or making new Forsaken, but rather fully acknowledges what will happen, whether or not she does anything, and as such wants to help and offer what she can to these newly confused, terrified, paranoid Forsaken, just as she once was not too long ago. On Horde orders, Lilian attacks the Kultirist town of Bridgeport to slay Captain Amelia Stone and retrieves her corpse. Once Captain Stone has been raised into undeath by the Valkyr, Lilian Voss comforts Stone and helps her adapt to undeath. Captain Stone takes both Lilian Voss and Nathanos to the gravestone of Marshal M. Valentine, one of the highest-ranking military veterans in the Baronil Cemetery, and the gravestone is empty. That's because Marshal M. Valentine died at sea during the Second War. Lilian Voss, alongside Rexar, notes that they need someone to help them find the site of this wreckage of this ship where Marshal M. Valentine was lost, and they realize that the Tide Sages of Kultiris might be able to help them. Of course, not willingly. Fortunately for them, they find or unfortunately I guess, they find a Tide Sage by the name of Thomas Zelling in Stormsong, who appears to be dying of some sort of illness of some kind. We don't really know what. He's just sick, and he's mainly concerned about his family, and he actually expresses interest to the Horde in becoming undead. If he can become undead and escape the sickness, he can perhaps still see his family and interact with his family. Of course, Lilian Voss says that's probably the worst idea you've ever thought of in your life. Don't do that, you're stupid. And he doesn't listen. He asks them, will undeath clear me of this illness? Will I be able to see my family again? And Lilian tries to explain to him that they won't see you the same. and despite this, he ignores Lilian Voss. Zelling makes the agreement that if he helps them with this task once he's been raised, they have to protect his family. Lilian Voss, despite the fact that she can't convince him to not become a raised Forsaken, agrees to protect his family should he help them. A Valkyr is called to raise Thomas Zelling into undeath, and Lilian Voss watches as his family absolutely rejects him. They see him as a monster, they see him as a rotting corpse, and she is there to accept him into the Horde. Despite watching this rejection, despite seeing what his wife and children and how they reacted to Thomas Zelling's physical appearance and very nature, Lilian Voss keeps her word. She helps Zelling's family find a home in Aram Strand and actually makes sure they're well fed, despite watching all of the rejection and everything that happened. Lilian is actually present for the expedition where they recover Valentine's body, where they also find the body of Derek Proudmoore. After Sylvanas raises Derek Proudmoore as a Forsaken, Lilian Voss is one of the only ones on board the ship who is not horrified. She's not surprised in any sort of way. Lilian knows that Sylvanas only sees the Forsaken, these corpses, as mere arrows in her quiver, and that this changes nothing for Lilian, nor for what she needs to do. When she sees that Sylvanas has been planning to deprive Derek of his free will, Lilian wonders if Sylvanas takes any pride in what should have been the distinction between Forsaken and Scourge. Lilian is embracing this identity as Forsaken, that she is not a monster outright. She is not a blind, horrible monster, as she once saw all undead, but that there is a distinction between the mindless, ravaging undead of the Scourge and the people of the Forsaken. And Lilian notes that she wonders if Sylvanas still has pride in that distinction, making you beg the question. Lilian's thinking of the real answers here, thinking of the real questions rather, but the Forsaken, well, certain other people are definitely not. Later on in the war campaign, and spoilers if you haven't done this, right before Bane is arrested, Thomas Zelling is executed by Nathanos for his role and involvement in freeing Derek Proudmoore from the Horde, and Lilian Voss notes after that she's going to keep her promise and help keep Zelling's family safe, and if they ever ask of what became of him, she's going to tell them that he died a hero. Lilian, despite her feelings towards the rejection of the undead, as she said earlier about the Alliance and how the Alliance kingdoms and human kingdoms have shunned their former brothers and sisters, Zelling's family is doing exactly that, and yet she is maintaining her promise. She could easily, in a very Forsaken kind of way, just leave the family or kill them, or in a fit of blind rage, but she took sympathy on Zelling, and she understands Zelling's desire to still be accepted by his family, and she keeps her promise. She keeps her promise to them. Maybe she sympathizes a little bit. She knows her own hatred towards the undead and her misguided views, and maybe there's sympathy there for the way that they view Thomas Zelling, just as the same way she once viewed the undead from that biased, bigoted point of view. And that wraps up everything we've seen from Lilian Voss in Battle for Azeroth in World of Warcraft, but there's obviously more to come. 8.2.5, 8.3, beyond. But what lies in store for Lilian Voss? What lies in store for this particular Forsaken character? Well, I got some thoughts. I got some speculation here. Let me sprinkle some of these thoughts, and you can let me know what you think. Is Lilian Voss potentially the future leader of the Forsaken? I don't think so. I don't think Lilian Voss is. While her past isn't as well detailed or well documented as, say, someone like Sylvanas, she is part of this new age of Forsaken, this new group of Forsaken that have been resurrected by the Valkyr in the Cataclysm, and she actually shares some of the same sentiments and thoughts on undead free will and how they see themselves as not monsters as the members of the Desolate Council from Before the Storm. These are all great qualities for a leader, so why don't I see her as being a leader? Well, I see her as more being a Nathanos kind of character, a second in command of the Forsaken leader. I don't see Lilian Voss stepping up as leader when she's a rogue character. She is best at use when she's in the shadows, when she operates as an agent, not so much as a leader. She was trained as a soldier by the Scarlet Crusade, so she knows a lifetime of battle, a lifetime of warfare, but being a leader, I don't know, I just can't see it. I see her really being a strong general, lieutenant of whoever the Forsaken leader is. If there is a sort of desolate council type leader in the future, she could be the go-to, the general, the lead assassin, but I just don't see her being any sort of Queen of the Forsaken. Could she be a joined leader of the Forsaken? Alongside, let's say, Nathanos, a New Age Forsaken leader and an Old Age Forsaken leader. Old Age, original, OG. OG sounds better. Maybe. Again, I don't see it. I like her being the sort of right hand or left hand of whoever the new Forsaken leader will be, should Sylvanas no longer be in charge. Another possibility is that Lilian Voss and Garona are working together with the Uncrowned to topple Sylvanas' reign. Remember, the Uncrowned is an organization of slayer of kings and the toppler of governments and kingdoms, and maybe they're just fed up with this very aggressive, trigger-happy world leader, and they want to do something about it, or at least an attempt. That would be amazing to see the class halls come back in some way, without it being an exclusive rogue quest. It'd be, if this is a plot line, the rogues definitely need their own little teaser or side quest where they're involved in some minor way. But it would be cool if other players and other people learned of this, at least attempted dismantling by the Uncrowned. That would be really cool. Could she be a future opposition to the light in some regards to the Forsaken, especially with Kalia Menethil back in the picture? Kalia Menethil is this light-infused undead, and with that potential future everyone talking about, could Lilian Voss be the polar opposite? Whether she stands alongside Kalia Menethil or she stands against Kalia Menethil, could there be this tug, push and pull between the light and Lilian Voss's shadow flames in terms of the Forsaken? Could there be a split in Forsaken society where they follow the same two leaders together as in a joint leadership, or they're separate? We don't really know. They're going to do the whole light void faction thing. Again, there's so many directions you can go with this, but with her hatred towards specifically the Scarlet Crusade and their fanatical ways in the light, maybe that comes into play with Kalia Menethil, especially now that Kalia Menethil's an undead. Now, on the subject of Kalia Menethil, it could be, and this is a possibility as well, that Kalia Menethil is Lilian Voss's mother. Lilian Voss could be the daughter of the heir to Lordaeron. We know that Kalia Menethil married a Lordaeron footman and had a daughter with him, and at some point during the whole Scourge Undead war, they got separated and lost, and we don't really know much more than that. We know that Kalia was afraid of running into a undead version of her husband and daughter, but we really don't know the actual fate of that. Maybe Benedictus Voss isn't actually Lilian's dad, but a sort of adopted father, as her dad, who may have been a Scarlet Crusader, was killed early on, and he raised her instead and didn't tell her that maybe he wasn't her actual father. Maybe he didn't know, he being Benedictus didn't know of her true lineage, and so didn't know that she was a Menethil. There's a couple things that can go on here. It could be that Kalia and Lilian have a connection, and if so, that means Lilian Voss would be the daughter to the heir of Lordaeron, and if something ever happened to Kalia Menethil, that means Lilian Voss would be the heir to Lordaeron. So maybe she does become an undead faction leader in some way. What do you guys think? What do you guys think that the future of Lilian Voss lies in store? What's going on with our girl Lilian? let me know in the description below. And that's all we got. Who is Lilian Voss? I hope this answered many of your questions. There's many more questions to be answered about Lilian Voss in terms of what's going on for Battle for Azeroth and beyond. But we gotta sit tight. We gotta see what happens. We gotta wait it out. We gotta play the waiting game. And of course, that brings this video to a close. Thank you to Shandryn and Laytis for your involvement on the script and with the images. You guys are awesome. And a big, warm, awesome thank you to our patrons over at patreon.com/The Lost Codex. You guys support us. That makes it awesome. To all of you who leave comments, thumbs up, all that sorts of stuff, that is awesome support as well. If you would like to help support The Lost Codex and what we do, and you want to see more videos from us more often, especially the animated juicy lore videos, by the way, one's coming, I promise you, it's in development. We're in the last stretches of it. Just keep waiting. Fingers crossed very soon. Head on over to patreon.com/The Lost Codex. And that's it. That's all we got. Who is Lilian Voss? Now you know. Go tell everyone. Go tell your neighbors. Go tell your friends. Go tell your priest. Don't do that. He'll get mad. And then you gotta stab him. But don't stab your priest, because he's the one healing you in your dungeons. Maybe the paladin. Don't stab the paladin either. Don't stab anyone. Unless you're a rogue. In which case, that's your job. But go tell everyone about Lilian Voss. Because she's awesome. And her storyline is definitely not over. There's so much more to happen. Battle for Azeroth, 8.2.5, 8.3, we don't know. Callia Menethil, Sylvanas, so many mysteries. Go tell everyone about Voss. And I'll see you guys next week for another episode of Lost Codex Legends. Until then.